What's happening, everybody? Ryan Thomas here, live on the Thomas Take Sports podcast, bringing you a mixed martial arts edition of the show, being that tomorrow night, the notorious one, Conor McGregor, is back inside the UFC octagon for the first time in little over a year. It's been a bit since we have seen and heard from the notorious one inside the UFC octagon, and we're going to get him tomorrow night. Wow, I botched that. Tomorrow night, Conor McGregor comes back. Doesn't just come back, he comes back to face a former foe in Dustin Poirier, a rematch that is 5, 6, 7 years in the making. The original fight, the first fight, I laid witness to that. That was really the first fight that set the wheels in motion for what has become the career of Conor McGregor, the biggest superstar that the sport of mixed martial arts has ever seen, the biggest superstar that the sport of mixed martial arts, we may never see a bigger superstar than Conor McGregor in this sport, in the sport of mixed martial arts. We might not. That's a fact. Fire away some comments in the comment section below. My name is Ryan Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to remind you guys from the top of the show that the Thomas Take Sports podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, you name it, it's out there. Facebook, YouTube, of course. I know I got a lot of mixed martial arts fans that love the show. Thank you for the support. The MMA Underground, as I like to call it, was really what set the wheels in motion in my own right for the show's success. And I greatly appreciate all the mixed martial arts fans that have been tuning in each and every event that I cover. This is my favorite sport outside of football. It has been a fantastic football season. There is no doubt about that. It has been an amazing, amazing season in terms of being a Buffalo Bills fan. But it's safe to say that I am pumped up for the fights tomorrow night. We don't just have a quality main event. We have a quality co-main event as well. This is the UFC 257 preview and prediction MMA show, where I'll be diving into the main event, the co-main event, and some of the fights on this card that are exciting to me. Some of the fights on this card that captivate me and provide me with the interest that I'm just pumped up for this fight night. I'm pumped up for this fight card. So, that being said, it's been a bit since the UFC has really been able to be in full swing, I should say, and I'm thankful for that. Very thankful for that. It's very nice, shall I say, to have the Ultimate Fighting Championship back in a big way. What bigger and better way to start off the 2020 MMA year than that of the return of Conor McGregor, the main event, Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. I will not dive into the main event just yet. There's a fight that I have to discuss first. We'll get to the main event in a little bit, of course. But there is no event in mixed martial arts like a Conor McGregor fight card. Whether he has been gone for a year, whether he has been active. If Conor McGregor's fighting, I'm tuning in. You guys, I know you guys are tuning in. You guys don't really know what to expect. I don't really know what to expect either, but I do know that it will be a great night of fights. Anytime Conor fights, it is an entertaining fight night, whether he wins, whether he loses. I actually have the memory of him losing to Nate Diaz somewhat embedded in my brain, where I was, who I was watching those fights with, as well as the wins. Anytime Conor McGregor fights, it is a cultural event that you have to tune into. You have to lay witness to the notorious one, the pageantry, the walk into the octagon, the Billy Dollar strut. He is the biggest superstar in combat sports. Regardless as to whether or not he's the same guy, we'll find out. That's one of those age-old questions. That's one of those big questions that we are going to have answered for us come fight night between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. That's the preview portion. We're in the preview portion of the show. The prediction portion is coming. Don't you worry. But Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler, they deserve their shine. They deserve their due. This is an awesome co-main event featuring Michael Chandler, who is making his UFC debut against Dan Hooker. And I have a few hot takes on this fight. Michael Chandler's octagon debut coming against Dan Hooker. This is a question that we were asking ourselves as mixed martial arts fans. Who would Michael Chandler fight in his octagon debut? Who would we see him compete against? Would it be Dan Hooker? Would it be Conor? Would it be Gaethje? Would it be Khabib? Would it be who would we see him fight against? And to me, when you put together these opponents for a fighter making their UFC debut or just matchmaking in general, you have to make it an interesting fight. You have to make it a fight that makes people go, oh, okay, that's going to be a good one. And mission accomplished. Sean Shelby, Dana White, the UFC, mission accomplished. I am very much looking forward to this co-main event just as much as I am the main event. When this fight card was first announced with Conor versus Poirier, they showed the fight card. The Dan Hooker-Michael Chandler fight was not announced yet. So when I see this card, I say to myself, this fight card sucks. Outside of the main event, yeah, this fight card sucks. Well, Dana being Dana, he's always got things, in the works. He's always putting fights together that people really want to see. And the fight that he puts together, Michael Chandler versus Dan Hooker, sign me up. Where do I sign? Where do I pay to watch pay-per-view? I know where I pay to watch pay-per-view. We're going to ESPN Plus to pay and watch this pay-per-view. That's another thing. Dana White, he's coming for y'all. He's coming for the illegal streamers of UFC 257 or any UFC event. I'm not one of them. I'm buying this one for sure. Is Dan Hooker, though, the most underrated lightweight in the UFC? I think the UFC might be looking past Dan Hooker a little bit in this one. They have a shiny new toy in Michael Chandler, former Bellator MMA champion, 3-time Bellator MMA champion. He's fought plenty of durable fighters over the course of his career. He's had some wars inside the Bellator cage. Shifting over to the UFC, though, he's finally fighting that top-tier, cream-of-the-crop level competition. And I think that this is a nightmare of a matchup for Michael Chandler. To draw Dan Hooker as your first pick out of the hat, that's a really tough draw to take on Dan Hooker if you're Michael Chandler making your UFC debut. I believe that Dan Hooker is the most underrated lightweight in the UFC today. I say that wholeheartedly with zero hesitation. Watching Dan Hooker's last fight, which was against Dustin Poirier, he went toe-to-toe with Dustin Poirier. He gave everything he had against Dustin Poirier. Ultimately, it wasn't enough. But Dan Hooker is no slouch. Dan Hooker is no joke. I think that Dan Hooker is going to come very much prepared for this fight. And you look at the sizes of both Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler in this co-main event. You say to yourself, Dan Hooker is much bigger than Michael Chandler. He's longer. He's rangier. He's just flat out physically far superior to Michael Chandler, I think, in terms of size, length, height. Whereas Michael Chandler, he's a big guy for his size. He's a compact wrestler. He's a guy that I think could take this to the ground, and he should. If Michael Chandler finds himself in a stand-up battle with Dan Hooker, this fight won't last long, plain and simple. And I'm not taking anything away from Michael Chandler in the stand-up department. I know that he's got power. I know that he can strike. I know that, he's got a great overhand right, as most wrestlers do. Fighters fear that double leg takedown or that single leg shot, and that's why wrestlers are able to land that overhand right, I should say. Because a lot of fighters are playing the defensive, sprawl tactic game, whereas Chandler is able to throw this overhand right down the pipe, land it with precision almost every time he throws it. He landed it on Eddie Alvarez, Patricio Pitbull, Benson Henderson. But Michael Chandler is a worthy fighter, and I am happy that Michael Chandler is in this upper echelon of the UFC. They didn't, give him an easy fight. They didn't give him a tune-up fight right out of the gate. They gave him Dan Hooker, who is the most underrated lightweight in the UFC right now, and that is high praise because right now you have Khabib, Conor, Poirier, Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, Tony Ferguson. I think Dan Hooker is a tough out for any of those guys, including Conor. I'm very high on Dan Hooker. I think that he's a up-and-coming, he's a contender in this division. Whether he becomes a champion or not, That in and of itself remains to be seen, but I think that Dan Hooker is a far better fighter than he's given credit for. So who do I think is going to win that co-main event? Obviously, Michael Chandler being the championship caliber fighter that he is, regardless of the organization, whether it's in Bellator or within the UFC, I think, obviously Chandler's got a ways to go to get to that UFC type level. But I do believe that Dan Hooker is willing to bite down on the mouthpiece for this one. And it's a 3-round fight, though. So if Chandler brings us into the world of wrestling and makes this into a grappling match, I think Chandler can win it. But Dan Hooker is a tough guy to get down to the ground. If Chandler is as good as a wrestler as I think he is, if he is that great of a wrestler in terms of his MMA prowess in MMA wrestling, he can win this fight. But I do believe that Dan Hooker is going to get it done. I think that this is a tough matchup for Michael Chandler. I hope, for Chandler's sake, I'm wrong. But I think this is a tough matchup for Michael Chandler. So I got Hooker winning it via decision. So we do have to acknowledge that the UFC lightweight division is in a little bit of a mess. We have to sort out this mess of the UFC lightweight division. And that mess refers to the fact that we do not know whether or not Khabib is actually coming back. And this event, UFC 257, is looked at by most as an unofficial UFC lightweight tournament where you have 4 guys in the main event, 2 in Dustin Poirier and McGregor. In the co-main event, you have Michael Chandler and Dan Hooker, obviously, as I just dove into. So in a way, this is a little bit of a mini lightweight tournament. We find out unofficially in this main event, you could have made this main event between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor a title fight, and I wouldn't have argued against that. I would have said, okay, that's fair, that's fine. I get it. McGregor's the cash cow. Poirier was a former interim champ. I actually wouldn't have had many, beefs, or I wouldn't have had a beef with that decision if the UFC went that route. I would have said, okay, that's fine. But instead, the UFC does have this quote-unquote mini lightweight tournament between Poirier, McGregor, Hooker, and Chandler. And the winner of these 2 fights, I think, could potentially fight for the vacated UFC lightweight title. And that all depends on what the hell is going on with Khabib Nurmagomedov. And I'm not firing shots at Khabib here. I'm not trying to, kick a man while he's down. Khabib is going through some tough stuff. He's had some personal things, going on with his dad. His mother does not want him to fight anymore. The reasons Khabib was the fighter that he was, and the fighter that he is, and the fighter that he always will be, was in large part due to the inspiration that his dad provided him and instilled in him at a very young age that, hey, you can be this great fighter. You can go 30-0. I believe in you. Without that figure there, it's tough for Khabib to get up in the morning, especially when you've accomplished everything that you've set out to do outside of going 30-0. The question is, how much does the record of 30-0 mean to Khabib Nurmagomedov? With his dad, it meant everything. Without his dad, not so much. It might not mean as much. And that's okay. I get it. But I'm taking my sentimental heart out of that and looking at this as a podcaster, as a UFC fanatic, MMA fanatic. And I say to myself, for the betterment of the UFC, for the betterment of the division, the UFC lightweight division, if a champion feels like he does not want to fight anymore, he shouldn't fight, which means he should vacate the UFC lightweight title. And frankly, the whole notion that, Dana White said on the UFC ABC show with Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar as the main event of that fight card, what an impressive performance that Max Holloway turned in last Saturday, one of the all-time great performances that I've ever seen. I say to myself, okay, we're waiting for Dana to divulge what's going on with Khabib, what's next for Khabib. And he says, well, Khabib's basically saying, show me something. Show me something good enough to make me want to come back. If you have to be shown something good enough from 2 fighters that you've already beaten, outside of those guys, Michael Chandler, is he a fighter that Khabib would sign the bottom line for? Probably. Dan Hooker, is that a fighter that Khabib would sign the bottom line for? Probably. But are those tantalizing pay-per-view matchups in comparison to a Poirier rematch or a McGregor rematch? Certainly not. So, without saying cut the shit, I'm saying to Khabib, cut the shit. Let's vacate the title. You don't want to fight. That's fine. If he doesn't want to fight, say it. We're okay with that. We get it. We understand it. No one will label him a coward that isn't trying to pick a fight with him. Conor might label him a coward, but Conor is trying to pick a fight with him. He wants that fight back. He wants that loss avenged. But anyone in their right mind would never call Khabib a coward. That's not what Khabib is. So, will he return? I don't know. It's the biggest question in mixed martial arts right now. Will Khabib Nurmagomedov return to the MMA fighting circles, the UFC octagon? I don't know, but I don't think he should. I want the UFC to actually take the initiative here and move on from Khabib Nurmagomedov. Move on from Khabib. Make this Poirier-McGregor a title fight. Too late for that. The fight's tomorrow night, but if it's too late for that, let's just say, okay, Khabib, retire, right off into the sunset, vacate the title. We'll put the winner of Poirier and McGregor and the winner of Hooker versus Chandler together in a title fight. Could be McGregor versus Hooker, could be McGregor versus Chandler, could be Poirier versus Hooker or Poirier versus Chandler. I'm okay with any of those fights as a UFC lightweight title fight. Any of those fights sell. Do they sell as well as Conor versus either of those guys? No, they don't. But obviously, we know why that is. Conor McGregor is the cash cow of mixed martial arts. He's the draw of the sport. Every sport has one. And Conor is the draw of mixed martial arts, or the straw that stirs the drink. We could say that too. So will Khabib return? I don't know. Should he? I don't even care if he does. I would prefer it that we actually knew what was going on with Khabib rather than this. We're going to tiptoe around it. We're going to see. We're going to wait and see. No, let's sort out the mess of this division and figure it out. All right. So now, Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor, the main event. I previewed the co-main event between Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler as well, sorting out a little bit of the Khabib mess within the division. If you didn't check that or catch that live on the broadcast tonight, if you're tuning into this on audio and you're skipping through the Hooker and Chandler talk just for me to get to the McGregor Dustin Poirier discussion, I don't blame you. This is a massive, massive fight. This is a fight that I've been looking forward to for a long time, and a fight that I knew we would get potentially if things flowed this way. And what I mean by that is a lot of things had to go this way in order for this fight to happen this way. And maybe not for the better. Maybe not for the better. In the case of Conor McGregor, did Conor ever see himself fighting Dustin Poirier again? I don't think so. Can you top the original performance that you had against Dustin Poirier? You can't. There's no way you can. But if anyone is up for that challenge, it is Conor McGregor. That's a safe assessment. So one of the questions heading into this fight is the fact that is the McGregor of old the McGregor of today? There's been a lot of discussions heading into this one. The narrative heading into this one is that is Conor McGregor back? The Conor McGregor that took the UFC by storm, reigned over the UFC featherweight division, stockpiled win after win after win, climbing that featherweight ladder on the way to beating Chad Mendes essentially on short notice. As Aldo pulled out, Mendes came in. He beat Chad Mendes, the wrestler, fighter that a lot of people believed could beat Conor at that time in 2015, only to finally fight Jose Aldo and knock him out in 13 seconds. Is that the Conor McGregor right now that we're seeing? And there's a double-ended sword to this question. I think yes and no. I think motivation-wise, the motivation that Conor has is what it once was. I'm seeing that in interviews. I'm seeing McGregor of old in terms of how he is speaking in regards to his own skill set, how he is speaking in regards to his own mindset. And those were two things that were always in unison. McGregor had true self-belief in himself, mentally and physically, that he was as elite as he thought. And ultimately, if anyone was proven right about Conor McGregor, it wasn't a fan, it wasn't a trainer, it wasn't a journalist. The one person that believed in Conor McGregor, that was right about Conor McGregor, was Conor McGregor himself. So he proved his own point of how legitimate a fighter he was. He proved his point that he could be a champion twice over. Proved his point that his goal and his mission was to not only win the UFC featherweight title, but was to win the UFC lightweight title simultaneously, becoming the first champ of the UFC. Simultaneous champ in UFC history. He did that. So you set out these goals for yourself. You put these goals out for yourself and you say, this is what I need to do. I'm going to do it. You do it. Then what? Then what comes after that? Well, with every rise, there is a fall, unfortunately. But if there's anything that American sports fans, or that sports fans all around the world love, appreciate, and understand, it is a fall and then a comeback. Tiger Woods, Conor McGregor. You say John Jones, hopefully he does get on the right path and wins the heavyweight title at some point. For his sake, I hope so. How many athletes along the way have fallen on tough times only to rise up again and become better? I think Tiger Woods is actually the greatest example. Now, are the things that Conor did or the instances that we're referring to in Conor's personal life, a lot of them are speculation, but they're obviously not a good look for the image of Conor McGregor, for the career of Conor McGregor, to find himself in these discussions of just awful allegations as well. The bus incident in Brooklyn, breaking down the window, trying to get to Habib. The Habib pre-fight press conference was a little odd. Dana White said it was the darkest press conference that he could ever remember. So is that Conor McGregor gone? That Conor McGregor, that 2018, 2019 Conor McGregor, is that guy gone? 2017 Conor McGregor was waiting for that Floyd fight. He got the Floyd fight. Beyond the Floyd fight, a big fight obviously made him hundreds of millions of dollars, reportedly. Is that the fight that really sent McGregor down this terrible path? I think it was. And that was what I feared about Conor fighting Floyd. But the question is now that he has removed himself from the sport mentally, not physically, only to come back mentally and physically over the last year with the performance against Donald Cerrone that was extremely unique. I've never seen anything like it. He wanted a 2020 season. He didn't get it for obvious reasons. COVID-19 had other plans for 2020, unfortunately, and ultimately it postponed the career plans of Conor McGregor. Now he's back, and I think now you have a refreshed Conor McGregor in terms of the fact that he actually has some opponents to work with now. Prior to Cerrone, it was a very tough battle finding the right opponent for Conor to fight. And Cerrone was that guy at 170. They fight at 170. Conor didn't have to cut weight. He gets it done. Now you got Poirier in front of him, potentially Hooker, potentially Chandler. Oliveira's out there. Charles Oliveira's coming off a huge win over Tony Ferguson, and he's on fire right now as a fighter. So I think competition breeds success, and there's one guy that enjoys competition, and that is Conor McGregor. There's one guy that loves success, that has achieved success within competition, and it was Conor McGregor. So I think now you almost have a little bit of a reset. We can remember what he did as a featherweight. We can remember what he did moving up to fight Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight title. The Floyd fight, yeah, that was fun. The Habib fight, the buildup was pretty odd. The fight itself was... Can I say the fight itself was fun? No. Was it entertaining? Not really. That was a pretty fight for obvious reasons. Habib just ragdolled him and everything. The Cerrone fight, though, beyond Habib, knowing that he didn't take that fight seriously with Habib, I think that put put the thought in McGregor's head that I need to make this comeback. I really need to start taking this seriously. And I think that is fair enough reason to believe that the McGregor of old is the McGregor of today. And I love what I've seen from Conor in the build-up to this fight. I feel like mentally he is better than ever in terms of how he is evaluating his own skill set, how he has improved, and really where his love for the sport is right now as it stands. He has a deep admiration and a deep love for the sport again. And when you love something as much as competition within a sport, it's very tough to not find success within that sport. So my expectations are that this Conor McGregor-Dustin Poirier fight is going to be a great fight. Conor says that it's going to go down in 60 seconds. He's going to beat the 90 seconds that it took him last time to knock out Dustin Poirier. I don't see that happening. And I think for as mentally sound as Conor is heading into this one, and Mystic Mac predicts, a lot of his fights, of course, comes with the territory, but I think that this fight is different. I think Poirier is a much, much better version of himself than the version of Conor that faced Conor back in 2014. Poirier's beaten the likes of Anthony Pettis, Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez, Max Holloway, Dan Hooker. Those are 5 wins that you're talking about. Max Holloway, former champion, Eddie Alvarez, former champion, Anthony Pettis, former champion, Dan Hooker, amazing contender, Justin Gaethje, technically former champion, interim champion. So Dustin Poirier becoming an interim champion in his own right, really the only loss that's on his record since Conor that was demoralizing was the one to Khabib. So who's to say that Dustin Poirier doesn't belong in the top 3 of this division? And he is. But I think Conor is still the better fighter. He's the more dynamic fighter. He's the more athletic, nimble, fleet-footed, elusive fighter in the octagon, especially in the stand-up. And I'm not taking anything away from Dustin Poirier's stand-up, but his boxing is extremely technical. But Conor McGregor's Muay Thai kickboxing ability is second to none. I mean, his striking, outside of guys like Anderson Silva in the history of the UFC, is probably some of the best striking in the UFC ever. The knockouts, the combinations, the punches, the awkward angles in which he throws punches and kicks is just pure devastation to the body of his opponents. And I think Conor is going to win this fight. I don't think it's going to be a quick knockout. If it is, it would be spectacular. It would be a miraculous win for Conor. But I think that this fight will play itself out over 3 rounds. And I see McGregor getting the TKO, but I do think he will battle some adversity. We will see Dustin Poirier take down Conor McGregor in this fight. Whether it's in the first round or the second round, I can envision that. And I think that this will be a technical bout for about 2 rounds. And then the third round, I could easily see, Conor opening things up and closing the distance on Dustin Poirier and ultimately winning this fight. But Dustin Poirier is a much bigger guy now than he was then. He's big for the lightweight division. But Conor's big for the lightweight division too. These guys are big boys now. They're in their 30s. They're fathers. They have kids. They are much, much different men than the versions of themselves that they were in 2014. So I can't wait for this fight. I got Conor winning via 3rd round TKO. This is a great money-making opportunity for Dustin Poirier, and I believe that Poirier will be up to the challenge. I'm not expecting Poirier to go down lightly like Cerrone did. I think Poirier will be up to the challenge, and I see Poirier putting a hell of a fight together in the first round. The second round, things kind of get taken from him a little bit, and then the third round, I see Conor closing out the show. Conor looks like he is in spectacular shape. It appears to me like he is taking his cardio extremely seriously. But, we'll find out once you're in a fight, things happen. So Jason Sansonetti says, I think Dustin needs to make it dirty, make it a dog fight, much like Nate Diaz, right? That's what we hope to see. Fight fans want to see a dog fight. We want to see fighters fight like they're doing their impression of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward. But well, that you can't get that with every fight. You're chopping a tree down. Eventually, the tree is going to fall. I think both of these guys are game for a war, though, and I do see it being a little bit of a war type fight within the first 2-3 rounds. But I just see McGregor in the third round, maybe even in the fourth round. I see McGregor coming away with a victory, and it would be a great victory and a feather in the cap of Conor McGregor if he does get it done. What does it mean for the future of the lightweight division? That is for the UFC 257 post-fight reaction show, which I bring to you guys every Sunday morning after any major UFC event or any UFC pay-per-view. I've done it for 5 years now. So stay tuned on that. UFC 257 post-fight reaction show, recapping the winners and the losers of UFC 257. But I say losers, that makes me sound like I'm saying these guys are losers. No, that I have the utmost respect for any fighter that is willing to put on a 4-ounce glove, or any glove for that matter, and duke it out for our entertainment. Poirier versus McGregor, this is an awesome fight card in terms of the pageantry of the main event, of course, and the pageantry of the co-main event. Michael Chandler, Dan Hooker, I broke that fight down for you as well. I think Chandler is getting a real tough draw as his first opponent, and I think it's due to the fact that you don't get an easy fight in the UFC, but this is probably the toughest that he could ever find with Dan Hooker. Jessica Eye versus Joanne Calderwood is a fight in the women's flyweight division that I'm very pumped up for. Jessica Eye is looking to bounce back from some tough stuff going on in her career. She lost to Valentina Shevchenko in pretty devastating fashion. Joanne Calderwood lost her last fight as well. So both of these ladies are really looking to get back into the swing of things. Jennifer Maia submitted Joanne Calderwood in her last fight, which took place in August. So both fighters are looking to get back here into the win column. I believe Jessica Eye fought Cynthia Calvillo, and she lost as well. So both of these ladies are coming off of a loss. Matt Frivola versus Arman Tuskarukian. That fight, I believe, was actually canceled. Arman Tuskarukian actually was cut due to the fact that he did not follow the health guidelines and health protocols provided by the UFC due to COVID-19. So that fight is off. Brad Tavares versus Carlos Jr., that's a fight on the prelims on ESPN and ESPN Plus that I'm excited for. Juliana Pena versus Sarah McMahon. Sarah McMahon, former UFC women's bantamweight title challenger once upon a time against Ronda Rousey. Juliana Pena, former Ultimate Fighter winner. Lady that I'm keeping my eye on is Amanda Ribas. She's taking on Marina Rodriguez in on the main card slate. So, we got some fights on this card. We do have some fights. It's not a great card overall, but the main event and co-main event is all we really need. That's all we really need in this one. Man, I can't wait for tomorrow night. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the UFC 257 preview and prediction MMA show. Enjoy the fights. Stay safe out there. We're living in a crazy, crazy world. You guys know that better than anybody. UFC 257 preview and prediction show. As I mentioned, UFC post-fight reaction show will be Sunday morning. Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. I got a great guest joining me on the show to preview and predict the AFC Championship game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. I am so excited to have my guest on Sunday at 1 o'clock. Wanted this man on the show for quite some time, making it happen. As Luke Rockhold once said, if you believe it, you will achieve it. And Michael Bisping says, sounds like the worst self-help book you've ever read. Oh, my God, that was great. Anyways, I'm Ryan Thomas. Thanks so much for tuning in. And, folks, subscribe. I can't say it enough. It sounds cliche, but my podcast is available on all podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Buffalo Bills football, NFL, around the NFL coverage as well. Draft season. I'm big on the NFL draft. You guys know, you guys that have followed me, spread the word. I really appreciate it. YouTube channel, Facebook page, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Obviously, the logo in the corner of this episode represents the Octagon, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast MMA content. I greatly appreciate all the MMA fans out there that tune in to the show. Take care, everybody.